Welcome back. Spring training is coming to a close for Major League Baseball. We're firmly in the middle of the tune-up period when it comes to the 2024 presidential election. And as observers have done all month in the Grapefruit and Cactus Leagues, we're doing some of our own scouting at this moment. There are three people who are arguably most likely to be elected president in 2024. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Ron DeSantis. And over the last few days, we've learned more about what to expect from each of them as this race heats up and what sort of candidates they will be in 2024. I think we learned perhaps the most about DeSantis. Joining me now on set is Toluse Olorunnipa, White House bureau chief for the Washington Post, Stephanie Schriock, former president of Emily's List and a senior advisor for the Strategic Victory Fund, and Stephen Hayes, editor and CEO of The Dispatch, as well as an NBC News political analyst. Tolu, I start with, I feel like we learned a lot this week about Donald Trump, about Ron DeSantis, and the Republican Party. I could give you what I think I learned, but I'll start with you. What do you feel like you learned this week?
Well, Trump and DeSantis have been on a collision course for quite a long time. They've been kind of on parallel tracks, and this is the week where we see those tracks start to merge, where DeSantis is starting to take off the gloves a little bit, slowly talking about Donald Trump in ways that show that he's willing to take him on, willing to at least broach the idea that he's going to have to contrast his own approach to governing with Trump's approach to governing. And for Trump, he's dealing with his legal issues. He's dealing with the fact that he's potentially going to be indicted here in a few days, and he's trying to rile up his supporters, going back to the same playbook we saw on January 6th, where he's telling people, protest, take to the streets, there's going to be death and destruction. And for DeSantis, this is the kind of thing that will allow him to create a contrast. Now, he has to show that he has to be able to show that contrast and actually get in the ring with Trump and make a clear difference between how he governs and how Trump governed. It's not clear that he's going to do that yet, but he has a clear path to do it at this point.
Steve, what did you learn about the Republican Party this week?
Well, I mean, what's interesting to me, picking up on that point, is that I think this week made Ron DeSantis' job a little easier. Because Donald Trump seems to be re-embracing political violence. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to read the death and destruction comment, but to say, like, hey, this is a threat. Sort of, my people might go out and cause this death and destruction.
Have we ever had an example of where he went out, talked about violence on social media,
and then it happened,
and violence happened,
or invoked it in the middle of a presidential debate, calling the Proud Boys to stand up and stand by?
I mean, on one hand, what I'm troubled by, I am troubled by weirdly. I don't want to say people are being dismissive of what he's saying, but I almost get the feeling because he says it on Truth Social, people don't take it as seriously.
But people are being dismissive. People have gotten accustomed to this. This is what's a scary moment. I think this is why this is a scary moment. People have become accustomed to this.
We're numb to it.
It's hard to imagine that the Republican Party would have re-embraced Donald Trump when you saw the condemnations that you saw from his most ardent supporters like Kevin McCarthy, like Lindsey Graham, in the aftermath of January 6th. But then Kevin McCarthy went to Mar-a-Lago. You've seen, you have 50+% of the Republican Party embracing Trump now. But this is why I think it's better for Ron DeSantis. He can be all the things that Republicans want in terms of policy, in terms of war fighting.
He certainly did this on Ukraine.
He's doing that.
I mean, that wasn't a good moment.
But if the contrast is, I'm the guy who's not for violence, it's a
well,
pretty good place to be, actually.
So he's going to be the anti-death and destruction candidate?
I think so. I think so.
It's a tough stand to take, I guess. Stephanie, what'd you learn?
Well, I don't know if I've learned much about this Republican Party. Other than they continue to do the same thing I keep seeing them do. Trump screams, I'm a victim. People are going to rise up, and then people start surrounding them again, and the Republicans start falling in line. So I actually think Trump, despite all of, he should have had a terrible week under all normal circumstances, but we don't live in normal circumstances. Instead, we're ending a week where I think he has actually made great gains with Republicans again. DeSantis, I don't think, has had a very good week. His little flip-flop on Ukraine showed that, governors have got to be really careful messing up on foreign policy because that's looked at very closely, and he did. And on top of it, he keeps showing like he's the ultra mega candidate, but I don't know. I don't know where it's going here.
Look,
they're going to protect Trump.
I believe. I don't know whether he made the job easier or not, and that's the thing. I don't know. I assume the weight of all this will eventually hurt Trump, the accumulation of indictments. But I have to tell you, Tolu, you have to be in awe of his ability to do what he did this week. He hijacked this week. We all knew he was hijacking this week. Many of us said it straight up that he was doing, and it didn't matter. you still had House Republican chairmen who apparently are telling our reporters off the record, yeah, this is a little too far. And they wrote the letter anyway.
That's right.
That's
exactly right.
He snapped their fingers and they're still afraid of him.
Yep.
They're still afraid of him.
They're afraid of him because he has voters behind him. It's as simple as that. If you look at the polling, DeSantis seems to be slipping a little bit in the polling. That's part of the reason he's taking the gloves off, because he realizes, according to some of these polls, that Trump is starting to pull away a little bit, and he still has the base of the party behind him. And the power of his voice, the power of his ability to rally that base is what keeps Republicans in line. It's what brings them back when they stray away for a week or two after he does something outrageous. He realizes that he's going to keep that base of support, and he feels very comfortable, and he's trying to rally that base of support and sometimes even incite that base to violence. But it's clear that he feels comfortable that that base isn't going anywhere.
Steve, it just feels like, I mean, you can absolutely see he's alienating himself more than ever.
Yeah.
More than ever from the middle of the electorate. And Republicans, I mean, it is binary.
Yeah.
You're either going to have to pick one group of voters or the other. You're not going to be able to win both.
No, I think that's right. If you look at the sort of the details of what Ron DeSantis was arguing in that interview this week, he started to make an argument that Donald Trump is a loser. We've seen this. We've seen other people sort of hint
They've
at
all
this
tried
argument.
it.
But we haven't seen a sustained case that Donald Trump is an electoral loser from somebody who's trying to remain in politics. Usually they say it on their way out of public office. He's saying it as a way to say, like, look, this guy wasn't effective. You might like what he's proposing. You might like the policies he talks about. He didn't get anything done. I get stuff done in Florida. I think that's likely to be a more effective argument. I think the challenge for Republicans is it is the case that they're afraid of Donald Trump because of his voters, so they don't say anything or they snap to, as you suggest. But it's self-fulfilling. Part of the reason that he has such command over his voters is because elected Republicans don't criticize him when they criticize him to us in private, but say the opposite in public. If there were more momentum behind that kind of critique, I think it could hurt him.
How often, by the way, Steve, how often have you, and I think fairly, when we've talked about, hey, Joe Biden didn't make his case for why we're in Afghanistan, or Joe Biden didn't make his case, or Barack Obama didn't make his case. The point is this, you would say, you got to make your case as to why. So nobody in the Republican Party is willing to make the case why Donald Trump shouldn't be the leader.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That's the thing. They're afraid to do it. Stephanie, though, instead of just letting you dunk on Trump one more time, Joe Biden's approval numbers are going down. What's your explanation?
I'm sorry?
Joe Biden's approval numbers appear to be going down, not up. And in theory, in some ways, considering the chaos on the Republican side, he should be stronger right now. But why isn't he? What's your sense?
It's a really, really good question, but I feel like in a moment where, particularly this week and really starting last week when the thought of the indictments were coming up, you all of a sudden have this rise for a moment of like Trump's taking over the news again. And there's literally like nobody knows what's going on with the Biden administration because there's not that much coverage. And no offense to anybody sitting here.
I know what you mean.
We just can't help ourselves. We've got to talk about Trump. And we talk about Trump, and then we kind of talk about DeSantis, who I actually don't think has, like, I don't think DeSantis has really hit the Trump. Well, Trump's going to beat him up.
Tomorrow's going to be fascinating.
It is going to be very, very
look what he
interesting.
did in his post, just trashing Florida accomplishments.
That's exactly
this
right.
This is a preview of
But I do think the Biden-Harris, challenge is going to continue to be until there's advertising. How do we tell the story of what they've done? And that all changes, but that's a long way away. But it's going to change when people start seeing it. We just might have to pay for it.
One theory I've had here, Tolu, is that basically Joe Biden's, his promise to voters was no more chaos. We're going to bring back normalcy. And anytime things are abnormal, voters get frustrated with him too. Whether it's his fault or not, but it's sort of one of those, Trump, Biden. And it almost like when Trump's in the news, it's bad news for Biden, even though he has nothing to do with it. It's just a thesis I have.
It's a smart take in part because Biden got 81 million votes. And a lot of those people were people that just wanted Trump to go away. They just wanted less chaos. And now when it comes to the Biden administration, there is less chaos around Biden himself and sometimes less attention, less eyeballs, less people knowing what he's doing. But a lot of those people are seeing chaos continue in the form of potential indictments for Trump, in the form of incitement of violence, and the sign that we are still in a polarized time in our country. And it makes it very hard for Biden to say that he's delivered on sort of this hope and change idea of we're going to bring everyone together, even though he's delivered on a number of different policy fronts.
I could argue he's tried to make some, but it's like I think he gets punished for when we're
I think he gets punished, but I don't think he's done a great job of returning us to normal. I mean, I think he's guilty of. I think he's guilty of a lot of the things that he said he wouldn't do. I mean, you think back to the speech he gave, the Jim Crow condemnation of Mitch McConnell. He's engaged in sort of base politics in the way that other people have in this moment.
But not nearly at the extent.
No,
he's not Donald Trump.
Even.
He's not Donald Trump.
Okay, let's just because we say that and people hear that, and it's not even close.
But Donald Trump didn't make a promise not to do it. Joe Biden said he's going to change the tone. He hasn't changed the tone.
Steve, Stephanie, Tolu, thank you all. Happy Friday.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.